Hey, I'm sitting here with author Aaron J. French.
Hi.
How you doing, Aaron?
I'm doing okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Today we're going to sit here and talk about Aaron's book, The Time Eater. It just came out about 3-4 weeks ago?
Yeah, it came out in January.
January?
Actually.
Okay,
Yeah.
a couple months ago. So first I wanted to ask you, what inspired you to write this book? Like maybe where did the idea of the book originate?
Well, here is the book. It's the Time Eater, out from JournalStone Publishing. Yeah. So what inspired me to write it, I guess, was I grew up reading Lovecraftian stories and other weird fiction a lot. So I always had an interest in trying to duplicate that kind of material. So I wanted to write, a novel-length thing, because most of Lovecraft's stories are short stories, but a lot of people have experimented, a lot of authors, with writing novel-length weird fiction. So I wanted to write a novel that still had Lovecraftian themes in it, but was novel-length.
Okay.
So, but as I started writing it, it ended up incorporating a lot more of what was happening in my life at the time. And it still stayed Lovecraftian, it's still a Lovecraftian novel, but it has a lot more of my own, I guess we could say, psychological baggage, I don't know, or my weird interests that I was getting into at the time I wrote it. I wrote it several years ago, and it had been sitting on my laptop for a while, so it's now finally out. So I think a lot of it reflects the strange things I was getting interested in at the time, which was a lot of psychotherapy and occultism, stuff like that.
Interesting. Yeah, I've from what I've read, there's definitely some interesting themes in the book. At the time, I suppose, when you're writing during certain periods of you could say difficulty or changing course in your life or what have you,
right? Trials.
Things can pour out of you. Yeah, trials.
Yeah, totally.
And from what I've read, there's definitely some interesting things, but I wouldn't say that all of it was based just on you. I'm guessing.
No, it definitely wasn't. It was just
fertile imagination.
Yeah. I read some good advice a long time ago in one of these writing books that it said, to draw on your life experiences was a good thing, but that to recreate it exactly was cheating, actually. And not only cheating, it didn't make a good story. So you wanted to, and it's a hard thing to get to learn to do. You take a life experience and you sort of write it down the way it happened, but then you have to change it. And it feels weird because it's your memory of it is one way, so to change it feels wrong.
Right.
But you have to do it anyway, because just because it happened this way doesn't mean it makes the best story. So I took some of my experiences, wove them together with some of the Lovecraftian stuff I was interested in and the weird fiction, the kind of dark mysticism that is, part of weird fiction, and just let my imagination run with it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose if you were to write about your own stories all the time, your own themes, and you could easily get sucked down that void, and then the book wouldn't be.
Yeah, it would just be some kind of memoir.
It's
which could be interesting, but it's not a novel.
Yeah, exactly.
Plot has to kind of be created.
But it's good to be able to draw on personal experience, to be able to draw something out, which you have in this book. I felt it right away. As I was telling you earlier, reading it, you definitely can feel what's going on right away. It's almost like you're getting a slap to the system right away.
Right, yeah.
Like that shock just hits you, and it's like, well, you're just transported into this world, which is what good books do.
Cool, yeah.
So,
yeah, I'm glad that worked.
So basically, you already described your thought about the combination of being a horror novel or a science fiction or a thriller. It's kind of a combination of all of them.
I think it's harder to classify than that. I mean, it has Lovecraftian elements. It probably has less of that stuff than other novels. And it is a horror novel also, and it is kind of a thriller, but there's definitely a lot of psychological stuff in it. So I think it's probably a psychological Lovecraftian thriller. But you probably wouldn't want to advertise it as that, because nobody would buy it, but it's something like that, I think.
Yeah. That's a dusty shelf waiting.
Right, yeah, it's on the top shelf. No one looked at it, passed it by. All the little old ladies did not reach up and grab off that shelf.
Yeah, well, but you never know. I mean, what does take something to be successful it's hard to say. I mean, we see what's successful now, and it comes out of left field sometimes. You're like, I didn't expect that.
Yeah, and some of the films that are pretty dark are popular right now, like the film Arrival. I'm thinking of something like that. Yes. Or what's the one that you mentioned?
Get Out.
Get Out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes films, can be more popular. It just depends, I think.
Sure. I mean, we definitely live in a cookie cutter society, and what I felt with this was it definitely didn't have cookie cutter themes.
No.
And that's a step in the right direction. I mean, it's original, and
right, cool.
I think it was a good job.
Thanks.
So, keeping up with the Lovecraftian theme, I've noticed, based on some of the other stuff you've showed me and I've read of yours, you're kind of known for your Lovecraftian.
If I'm known for anything, some of that is what it is.
Yes. So is the Time Meter inspired at all by the ideas of Lovecraft, or would you call this a story just weird fiction?
Yeah, I mean it doesn't have so when people are doing Lovecraftian stuff, it's they draw on the mythos, they call it, which is like actual references to Lovecraftian deities and stuff. I don't do any of that. I mean, so it's more weird fiction in this, and I guess really there's just a theme that's Lovecraftian. The theme is people find a weird old book, do stuff they shouldn't be doing with it. Some weird entity from another parallel dimension, summoned by CERN or something, shows up and causes havoc, and the guy has to deal with it. So that framework is a little bit there.
Yes.
But I hope to think that I took it in a different direction,
right.
Which I think I did, because it's not really a Lovecraftian book,
no.
But it definitely draws off the kind of story frame that he was big on.
What other writers do you like in that
field?
Theme,
yeah, I mean, I like Arthur Machen a lot, so you can see him a lot in there. I also read a lot of Clive Barker when I was in my 20s, and I think that comes across in this, which is,
I felt some of that theme, actually.
Right.
It's funny, I used to read Barker too, and I was wondering if that was somebody that you...
yeah, I read him a lot, so if you were to... I don't know why anybody would want to live in a world where Clive Barker and Lovecraftian themes were thrown together, but that's probably what's happening in the novel.
It would be absolute terror,
I wouldn't want to live there. I would try to get out of that world.
Yes, I would. But it's good to be able to visit there and to express themes from it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's part of the human experience, I think.
Or inhuman.
Inhuman. Yeah, I think we are human and inhuman.
Right.
So
that's true.
We're looking at the inhuman part of us when we look at that stuff, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the first couple pages of this book, when I read it, some of the things that popped out was some of the characters in it, especially your character Roger.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me a little bit about him?
Yeah, I mean, he is a fuck up, if nothing else. He's like an old, there's like elements of me in him, but it's like if I were to have been stuck the way I was at 25 and then projected myself into the future at 40 or something, that's what I imagined.
At that time.
Yeah. Which luckily that isn't what happened.
Right.
But for this guy...
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, for the character it happened.
Right.
So yeah, he's like an old recluse, nervous, depressed, dark dude, and has trouble with women, relationships, and rather than like figuring out maybe why he has trouble with relationships with women, he kind of blames the women and is just sort of bitter about the whole thing, which is part of his undoing in the book. That he's sort of, in the book he's forced to maybe look a little bit deeper at why things are happening in his life rather than blaming, women on the reason why his relationships, even if he married the most, like, in his mind, messed up woman who screwed him over, right? That could be true, but still, what role did he play in it? Rather than just blaming this person all the time and, like, thinking, oh, my life is horrible now because I was with this woman or this, this partner or whatever, he's forced to maybe re-examine that. So I think his main, it's a guy who is forced to go on a dark quest of self-discovery, I think is what,
Yeah, just reading the parts I have, the time meter element, introduces itself,
right?
In a pretty interesting way.
Mm-hmm.
Explain what you think your ideas of time would be, and how they interweave themselves through the story.
Like how I use time.
Yes.
In it. Yeah, well, I mean that's part of it. So time, like I tried to take time and make it into, this is the Lovecraftian part, like a date, like one of his Lovecraft's weird alien gods that he has, right? Like if I made one of those time, like Kronos, is the god of time in Greek mythology, or is a representative being of time, so yeah, like the similar idea, but in a horror world. So to take time and have it to be an actual thing, a living entity, which, you know, time doesn't care about human beings. That's pretty. We kind of get that already. But imagine if it was a being that that was behind that. You know, so yeah, so it's like a being, but it also, like, our memories live in the past. So this is a guy who is stuck in his past and bitter about it. And so time, in that sense, like, how do you live in the present? How do you live in the now? How do you know, get over your past? Like, that's also what the time meter is in this. It's also the, you know, it's also like can we, like, to feel stuck in the past all the time is to feel like be a prisoner to time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so is it possible to do battle with that? Right. Can you, like, fight the past and sped up to the present? And how would you do that? You'd have to, like, go through your memories. You know, therapy is a big part of this.
That goes back to the psychotherapy you were talking about.
Yeah.
Because definitely time, if you allow yourself, it's like people that grow up a certain period of time, or any time really, and you see it all the time where they listen to a certain kind of music that was what they listened to growing up.
Yeah.
But as they progress in their life, in their 50s, they still live at that place where that music
in the 50s, yeah.
Like that music may not be, their life may not be living there, but their mind for their music is. They don't progress.
Stuck on golden oldies.
Yeah, like, you know, they always blame hippies, say,
totally
for listening to 60s music, but they probably don't. They're up with what's new.
Right.
But the idea of what they're doing had a kind of a feel of a place in time.
Yeah.
Or you grew up listening to anything, Metallica, whatever. Doesn't matter what it was. You know, if you're still listening to it at 60, it means that, and somehow you're still allowing that past to maybe stuck, but maybe that it held a certain, you know, passion or something that was enduring at that point.
That's true.
But even if it didn't, even if you were a progressive person, but you couldn't listen to anything, it's still dealing with time because there's something about it at that time that, and it could just be as we're developing as people and we hit our teens and early 20s, that music holds more precedence because as life goes on, music probably means less to people or more.
Yeah.
But wherever I go, I see people
listening to the
same stuff that they listen to.
Yeah, it is an interesting phenomenon.
I'm older than you, so if I meet somebody from high school and they're still listening to stuff from the 80s, I'm like, man, really? Come on, dude.
There's more music out there.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's shocking, and they're looking at me like,
you don't listen to this anymore?
Yeah, like, what are you talking about? Reggae or whatever, you know?
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I tried to draw on some of that, you know, mystery of time.
Yes. Well, I think so far you've done a good job, you know.
Cool.
One of the things I was telling you that I felt like when I was reading it, and we can kind of go down this road a little bit, was I know you're a huge fan of the occult and the esoteric matters.
Yep.
And I can tell that some of the themes are definitely in this, in the book, but I felt like I was being sucked into a spell, you know?
Yeah.
And I have to give you credit for that because not a lot of books can do that, you know? A good book can transport you somewhere, but you never really feel like there's this foreboding something lurking there. And even right from the first parts of this, I felt like there was something, you know, lurking. So I think you did a good job of that. But can you explain some of those?
Yeah, well, like how do you...
You mentioned Chronos, so, you know...
Right, and well, how do you cast a spell? With words, with spelling, right? So, yeah, so, you know, when I'm into that stuff a lot more now, and I've studied it a lot. When I wrote this several years ago, I was just getting into it, some of it, and learning about it. Like a lot of people seem to do around that time, I think. There's been this, like, explosion of interest in these, what we could call occult topics over the past, like, 5-8 years. I mean, it was always around, but I think maybe the internet helped spread it around a lot more. And I was definitely, through the internet, and through people, exposed to a lot more of it. So I was reading up on it, and you know, Lovecraft has that stuff in his... All the weird fictionists have this stuff, this occult stuff, in their fiction. But it's really like, you know, just a plot. Sometimes it's just a plot mechanic, or it's just like kind of vague, or they just drop references to it to, you know, for their own purposes. Some of them definitely... You know, and this is obviously debatable. Some of them, you know, like Arthur Machen, for instance, was also a member of the Golden Dawn. And so he was more of a practicing occultist. I think Algernon Blackwood also was. So they were, you know, occultists and writing fiction. Like Crowley and Dion Fortune, both of them wrote fiction.
Right.
And then they were running around doing, you know, ritual magic all day. So they tried to merge the two. So I did try to do that, and it's, you know, that's a skill for sure to be able to do that. But I did try to incorporate some of that. So like the characters in the book, you know, the one guy is an occultist in college, I think, and he's like, in his own way, he's young, you know, he's learning about the occult, and he finds a book he has like an occult mentor at a bookstore, and he finds this, you know, the blasphemous book, the Necronomicon or something. Oh, that's not what it's called, but it's basically one of those books. And he and one of his friends, you know, in the book, do a spell that summons the Time Eater. And you could tell, you know, he does other things too. He becomes good at magic, and, you know, magic really is just like homeopathy or like home remedies a lot of the time. So he got really good at home remedies. And so people, you know, it doesn't sound sinister at all, but it's kind of the same package. So he got really good at healing people on campus with these like home remedies, like, you know, take a little ginger and one eye of newt in your Starbucks, and you will, your relationship problems will be over, or your cough will go away. So he is an occultist in that sense, but after they summon this Time Eater, he like relinquishes it all. Like it got too real, too dark for him suddenly. And it isn't until later, when the book starts, that he's drawn back into this world through meeting his friend James Steiner again. That he's like drawn back into his past as an occultist and has to like re-examine it. So there's that element of it. So there is a ritual, and the guy's an occultist. But there's also this other funny part of it, which I don't know if this is occult or I mean, I guess it's esoteric. But one of the people they have to draw on to help them later in the book. And I was playing with the themes of The Exorcist, you know that movie?
Okay, yeah.
They don't have to draw in a Catholic priest, but they draw in a Chinese acupuncturist, you know, Master Li. And, you know, it's kind of Orientalist there. But, you know, it's interesting that I wanted to show, you know, a different kind of saving power. And in this case, the guy goes through an acupuncture exorcism kind of a thing. So I wanted to show that, you know, that's a little more interesting to me. You know, Catholicism is certainly a cult. Also, but I was trying to draw on a different power or symbol system and show how, yeah, it does the same thing.
Interesting, yeah. The the themes are definitely occulty that I read, but it looks like based on things that, you know, you've told me and reading about some of the liner notes in the book, and basically you just said a word that made me think. The interesting psychological things that play out through this seem to have, like you were just mentioning, past traumas. So, do you look at it like they're healing in the book? Like they're healing through this catharsis, you know, this darkness that forbids them, and somehow they find something within that, I mean, I haven't read it, so you don't have to give the book away, but I mean, that part yet. But, if so, why would you choose a horror for telling a story about trauma and healing?
About healing, yeah, it seems kind of funny, but
that's what puts a fresh twist on it. I mean, you know, is that there is healing, you know. Yeah,
the characters are healing their traumas of childhood. In fact, the end of it is a big twist that has to do a lot with childhood trauma. Okay. And so yeah, I think, you know, hey, what is more horrifying than childhood trauma?
Yes.
You know, so I think that it actually works well to use horror. You know, and this is a little bit unique, I guess, but I am trying to use horror to show how people overcome horror. If that makes sense.
It makes total sense.
Yeah, so I think that they are healing in the book, but see, are they? You know, here's the horror part of it is like, yeah, they're healing, but the world is still fucked. Even if you heal. So then what are you gonna do? Kind of thing. So yeah, they are healing, but it's still a horror novel, so it stays horror at the same time.
Okay. Yeah, so the thought about using horror to heal is a good. I think it's a good theme, and the reason why we've talked about this before, but the idea of like a teenager listening to heavy metal when they're young, you know, they have that angst in them, but they don't realize at the time that maybe they're using that to expel that darkness that they have. Right. Obviously, they are to the outside world, but to them, they may not get it at that moment. It's just an expression.
Might be more rebellious or something.
But as you go on, as I've gotten older, I see people that still listen to stuff in their 50s or something. They're still listening to really hardcore metal.
Yeah.
And they don't just use it at the gym where a lot of people go and just listen to something heavy to get them pumped up. These guys will listen to it in their car or at work, and I'm like, I'll ask them just for wonderment, why are you listening to that? And they always say, man, this is what helps me just pump out all that anger. You know?
Right. Yeah.
So I don't have to. It doesn't manifest in me. So in a way, it's kind of the same thing.
Catharsis,
you know?
expression through darkness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard for people to express things in society like anger and violence, But I think everybody feels feelings of anger and violence a lot. But you can't really go around and start like just smacking people on the street or stabbing someone, even though everyone has those feelings really. So how do you want to get them out of you, so how do you express them? Well, sometimes darker themes, it's vicarious living through the horror novel or listening to this really, messed up music. It is a way of healing, in a sense, of getting it out of you. Yeah.
Also, just actually the act of writing, it could be a way
too.
to get
That's the way I do it, right?
Even if you were to write, Baba Black Sheep, it doesn't matter what you're writing. It's just the idea that you're putting something on paper, and that's how you're.
Yeah, you actually see it. You see it outside of you.
Right.
So you really say, "Oh, this was in me, and now it's outside of me."
Right, and that's how the ancients always viewed things too, right? They would find an expression and master themselves in it, and they occupied their thinking and their time. The Asians were particularly amazing at that, through some of the stuff they did with Tao and the calligraphy and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
Very, Zen-like kind of meditations, but it also was helping them in a spiritual sense to expel things.
Totally right.
Or to encompass, beauty and harmony, whatever it was that they were thinking at the time.
Yeah.
But I wanted to talk about the fact that with the book, you had two interesting quotes, one from Kafka and one from Nietzsche. How do they relate to the story?
The ones at the beginning?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, those, I found those quotes later on, towards the end, right before the editing process was done, and I just thought they really fit with what happens in the story, and you kind of have to read the whole book to understand why those quotes are there. But both of the quotes are about, learning to be a whole human being. So we're talking about this, healing of trauma and healing of getting out darkness, and Jung called it individualization, something like that. Individuate.
Right.
Yeah. So for Jung, he thought that in order to become a full individual and to individuate, you had to, rein in all these fragmented pieces of you and, tie them back together. So, and then you would be a whole human being. And then as a whole human being, you're much more happy, potent, but some of these fragments are dark fragments that are shattered for a reason through trauma.
Right.
So both of those quotes, Nietzsche is talking about that we have to have the courage to do that, because that's scary to go look at all these pieces, and rein them in, because they're dark, a lot of them. So we have to have the courage to do that, first of all. And then Kafka is talking about, just because he was a pretty tortured guy, about how he feels this restless urgency and despair that he has to do that. Like, if he doesn't get this stuff together and get it out of his brain, he won't be able to go on. Like, he feels this pressing need, and he's tortured by it. So I think the character in the book he's tortured. He's obviously a tortured character, but he also has the courage at length to try to individuate and become a whole human. Tries. I won't say whether or not he does it. You have to read it.
That's an interesting theme about that fragmentation, because that I think Jung is right about that. About how we're, and now with modern media and I guess you could call it the Ahrimanic style of thinking, or
like materialistic. Yeah.
But we're surrounded by so much stuff that can fragment us.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
So now more than ever, it's probably harder for an individual
I think that's a good point.
to even approach the theme, because they're so caught up into that, technology, so adamant, it's everywhere, so it's hard to avoid those themes of fragmentation.
Yeah, like when you scroll through a Facebook news feed, or even when you just watch, like on YouTube, I'll watch a video and it has on the sidebar all these other videos lined up for me to watch, and they're all like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So all of these like little fragmented pictures you get, I think it does have a devastating effect on the wholeness of one's inner world, world of pictures. And so like movies and TV were the beginning of that. You watch a movie that's edited in a certain way, like montage is part of this. You watch a montage, it trains your subconscious to kind of function in the same way, in a clipped and fragmented, though seemingly linear way, but it's really not. You're really all messed up, but you think you're going in a smooth A to B,
and
path.
that's why I told you I avoid some of those videos is because I've already, once you go down that road and you start, you become a junkie for it.
That's true,
You
yeah.
start
Then
reading
you
it,
get hooked
and then,
on it.
Then you get hooked on it, then it informs your opinion of things. And then when you take a step back, you're like, well, wait a minute.
Yeah, what the hell was that guy talking about? Screw that.
Yeah. Or just the ideas, because it's coming from a central point of view, right?
Yeah.
No matter what it is, a lot of times any of that stuff can just come from either that person's obvious
their own
point of view,
right.
or something that they're trying to push on from themselves.
Some agenda,
but it doesn't seem like it because they're crafty about they put them together. But just the idea of putting a string of videos, like you said, on the right,
it's very
easy
convincing.
To get fragmenting, especially if they're similar topics, but they're different points of view. Then all of a sudden you find something else. It's like, wow, and then all of a sudden, before you realize it, your psyche's been
it's been messed up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's messed up from birth, but even like this whole fake news, craze, like this is kind of related to that, because on the internet you can put something together that looks totally legit.
Right.
And what is legit anyway? You have to really question, like, what does that even mean? But it's super hard to figure out what the hell people are talking about nowadays, because you have all these different, methods of getting information on the internet that are convincing, and it just makes a person more fragmented. I mean, if the world was obviously fragmented, like in World War I and II, like if we were to go back and live in World War I or II, I think we'd be freaked out big time.
Yeah, absolutely.
But nowadays, too, it's pretty clear that the world is super fragmented, I think, just looking around.
Well, think about it. There's still major wars going on around the world, but we're shielded from their everyday existence, whereas back then you weren't, because the bodies had to go.
Right,
now,
that's true.
With technology, again...
Yeah, just send drones over there.
Now we just watch it on TV, and if we don't want to watch it, we turn it off.
Right.
Which is still...
I closed the tab on my browser. Sorry, war.
Yeah, but that's sad, too, because there's lives lost, and there's trauma happening there. And that's a whole other theme about healing there. But
but it's a good one.
Is. Maybe that'll be the theme of your next
Right. Returning from war.
Yes. God. So this is your first full-length novel. Have you written anything similar to it in the past? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I brought some of these. This is the first novel. It's not even really... It's not a giant novel.
I like that cover, by the way.
Yeah, I thought they did a good job on it. JournalStone hooked me up there. But yeah, so the only other I have several novellas out that are kind of like this.
What is this one?
Yeah, this is the only other one that's really just my stuff in it. And this is Aberrations of Reality. This is a collection of my short stories. And it's not exactly like the Time Eater. You can get this, on Amazon or something. But the stories in it are similar in that it's a lot of characters going through who are messed up and traumatized and, encountering their darkness. And a lot of times that darkness terminates in a kind of mystical experience. That's what I'm very interested in, is how can horror and trauma and writing replicate a mystical state. So I tried to do that with a lot of the stories in here. There's a new novella coming out from Unnerving, which is called Festival. And that is not really like this at all. That's maybe a little bit, but you can look for that. That's about female pagan sacrifice. It's a little bit different, but
another warm topic.
Another fireside Christmas tale. But so yeah, there's that. There's, if you go on my Amazon page, you can see it. There's also, this is the book that I edited that's been pretty popular. This is The Gods of H.P. Lovecraft. It has, great authors in here. Christopher Golden, Sina McGuire, Bentley Little, Rachel Kane. So it has all these, Jonathan Mayberry, it has all these great authors in here, and Donald Tyson, who is definitely an occultist.
Right.
If anybody's an occultist around here, it's got to be that guy.
Right.
And he wrote the descriptions of the gods in here, so that's pretty cool. So this is kind of like Time Eater. The thing about Time Eater that's different, though, which I think is where I take a lot of this stuff, is into these. This is not always, but I like to go into that psychological aspect, because that's what I do in my life. I spend a lot of time digging in here to figure out how messed up it is in there. I mean, it's really messed up.
Right.
So I like my characters to do that too, because I think the fruits of doing that is something mystical, or some kind of better picture of the world.
Sure.
So
that makes sense.
yeah. So there's other novella. I have a couple other novellas out there you could look up on my Amazon page. But again, this is the first novel. Hope to get another one out there soon. Yeah.
What themes do you think you'd like to explore still, other than the female pagan?
Yeah, that one, I got that one out of my system. That was an important one.
Okay.
I mean, that one's interesting. Festival, you'll have to look for it. I mean, it's a Have you ever seen The Wicker Man?
Yes.
You know that? It's a little bit like that, but at a hot springs.
Okay.
And this guy is like terrorized by, he's a total asshole dude, douchebag guy, right? And he's terrorized by this group of female, new agey, underground, goddess worshipping cult, So you'll have to see what happens to him. It don't end so well for that dude. But yeah, that one is coming out, I think, in like a month or something like that. But yeah, no, I would like to write I don't have time for this with the academic stuff I'm doing and all the nonfiction stuff, but I would like to write a really serious, it could still be horror. I'm not against horror at this point. I don't write it as much as I used to, but I definitely like the darker themes, and I would like to write a really extensive novel that really explores this theme we're talking about in a very comprehensive way. Like The Time Eater does it, but it's more like experimenting with this theme. Yeah. I would like to get to a point where I can explore this theme of really showing a person's transformation of characters, really convincingly, really realistically, really still you have to have the darkness in there. Yeah, so definitely
the horror to the healing.
Yeah, and really but also with this the spiritual mystical part of it. Okay. That's another thing that I just like to to keep writing about, is how to replicate mystical states in characters. So in all the weird fiction like Lovecraft, these guys, these stupid Anglican dudes walking around, totally materialistic scientist guys, right. And then they have some encounter with the whatever CERN has summoned in 1920, and then they freak out, and they have to their Western epistemological system freaks out against, oh my God, how can there be this, and that's their form of mystical experience, right. Which I don't jive
that's
with.
More trauma.
Yeah, right. I don't jive with that. In Arthur Macken's stuff, more of it for me at least seems like the guy is seeing, his characters are seeing what's behind in nature, and that's right. What I want my characters to really get a sense of lifting the veil and seeing what's behind it, and then how the hell does one replicate that in a story and still make it interesting? Because for some people they're that's way too weird and abstract. I think they would not really want to read it. For me, I'd read that stuff all day, but right. So I want to have that in there, but still have it be a story with a drama and characters.
Interesting. So it seems like you have a twofold thing, which I mean, I hate to say it, but literally, I guess if you were to really break it down into maybe an occulty mm-hmm. side, you literally have the dark and the light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The themes are dark, but somewhere buried in there, there's
the light.
Sunlight.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And maybe there's more because I haven't finished the book yet.
Yeah.
But that is an occult. Dark and light,
balance
right?
of dark and
light. The balance between life, between
mm-hmm.
the dark and light.
Yeah.
Which I think is a heavy theme that I think a lot of people don't really understand or grasp. We all are told do the right thing, do the right thing. Mm-hmm. But even if you do the right thing, sometimes there's still something that can nag at you, whether it be a past life or something happened in your childhood, whatever.
Yeah, or just thoughts. I think people go around all the time and have thoughts that are horrible, yeah. And then just either pretend not to have them or ignore them. Yeah. I have a friend who's a teacher, and back in Arizona, and he told me that he taught at a community college. He straight up said to me one time when I was in his class, this is years ago, "You know what I do when I walk around on campus?" And I said, "What?" And he said, "I imagine myself walking by all these undergraduate students and sticking out my elbow and elbowing them over the sides of the bridge, and so they fall down and crack their neck on the." He's like, "Well, just walk around imagining that all day long." And I was like, "Wow, really?"
Strange. I never have those thoughts.
Yeah, but I think maybe you do.
I probably have in my
driving on the freeway.
It's funny. I've tried to eliminate those things because I'm one of those people where darkness will, if it assimilated itself fully, I would be in big trouble. Mm-hmm. So I purposely keep it at bay. I was telling you about that earlier.
Yeah, right. And that's
but
not all
that's
people
okay.
Are like
yeah,
that.
No, they're not, and it's okay to think about stuff. But part of your spiritual development is to try to realize that everything is going to pass. So
Mm-hmm.
why get upset about something?
Yeah, right. Easier said than done, but right,
it is,
conquering anger.
But that's part.
It is part of it.
Of going through that transformation.
Totally.
Eliminate the idea of anger. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's always been around, but it is true that but it's hard. It is. It's something you have to constantly remind yourself. Right. Same with thinking about as a man, we tend to think about sex a lot. It's the same thing. Like, how do you stop thinking about it? You know?
Yeah.
Is it wrong to think about
right,
it?
That too. Right. Is there a moral
but
component to it?
Is it? But really, in another world, in a spiritual world, that's something that you want to keep at bay, probably, because you know, you're dealing with other.
Yeah,
in some worlds,
it's the road of desire is what it's about.
Yes.
Yeah. So
yeah,
how does one conquer their desires? Like a desire to knock a guy off a bridge, an undergraduate student who's like picking his nose, you know, and knocking him off the bridge. That's one desire. Right. Another desire is, you know, the carnal desire. That's a big one. So it's about conquering desires. It's not. I haven't done it. It's not easy. So, but yeah, but
now you know that that's something that you have to consciously think about.
Right, and I think it does take light and dark, like what you're talking about. In order to
expel the dark, or get to the light, you have to expel the dark.
Yeah, like there's this very interesting historical figure in Poland named Jacob Frank.
Of course.
This is in the 1700s, I think, and he, you know, had this brand of Judaism that I think his philosophy is very interesting because it's about redemption through sin or something like that. And so he said that you couldn't, and this is like, I think some Crowley talks about some of this stuff too. Like in order to get to the light, you have to go through the dark. And like William Blake said in a quote, one of his quotes is the road of excess leads to the palace of wisdom. Yeah. So it's like you can't actually get to the light until you go through the dark.
Well, it's an ancient theme. Think about, you know, in ancient Egypt, right? They went to the Duat.
Right, the underworld.
You know, the underworld of darkness.
Totally,
and
right.
And they came out.
Same idea.
You know, so
exactly, right.
That theme's been there forever. Same with Zoroaster and all those other ones.
In Greece as well. They did that,
so that theme's always been there, you know. It's just how you personally approach it. But here's one way you can do it, is that you can write books.
You could read my books.
Yeah. There you go. That'll get that out there.
To go into the underworld.
So, where can people purchase the book and find out more about you and your work?
Yeah, so you can go on Amazon. Recently I'm doing a lot of work with JournalStone Publishing, which is great. And so this book, The Time Eater, this one, The Gods of H.P. Lovecraft, which is super cool. You can get it on JournalStone website, or you can get it on my Amazon author page. Like this other one, The Aberrations of Reality. This one's not JournalStone. This is Crowded Quarantine. That's on Amazon. So just you can go on Amazon. But I also have a.
What's this one?
Oh, and then this is the magazine that JournalStone puts out, Dark Discoveries.
Oh, okay.
So you can get that on Amazon or on Joe Hill on the cover. That's cool. Yeah. So yeah, you can get that on Amazon or on JournalStone also. But I have my own website that I finally tried to make. I don't know how it looks, but it's on the ether webs, and it's aaronjfrench.com. Okay. So you can go there also. And on there you can find more stuff, because it's not just this fiction, you know, that I'm doing. I have like on these occult themes I write some more nonfiction stuff, and also like there's some videos on there. So if you go on my website, you can go under like nonfiction work and under interviews to find out more about what I'm doing, you know, in the nonfiction world. And so like I'm a grad student at UC Davis right now, so some of that work, the academic work, which is about religion and about, you know, esotericism also, you can find links to some of those papers that I'm working on, or that I've published in various places.
We've kind of talked about a lot of these themes, but since you're bringing up religion, how does that play out in your life, or at least in terms of your writing? In horror
novels? Isn't religion horror?
Yeah.
Horror? I mean, I think of it as horror. You just have to think for like 1 second about like the Inquisition.
Of course.
Burning women at the stake who are witches, stuff like that. You know, it has great things too, but there's some horror there. I think it's good. Good fodder.
For material.
Yeah, but why I think it's horror is because religion is the ultimate question. You know, it's ultimate. And I think that everyone solving everything by politics is I think that's an obsession that comes after the French Revolution in the West, particularly, that politics will save every moral question. And there's some truth to that, but there's also the big question of, like, after you die, what happens to you? Do you just get dumped in the ground over there, or is there something else that happens after that, you know? Sure. So that's the big question. And religion attempts to, and philosophy too, but religion has always really been the place where that question seems to live. Right. And so I think that question is horrifying, because let's say that after you die, you like look around and you see yourself like laying on the ground right there, and you're like, whoa, I guess I'm dead. and then really weird alien ghost beings like walk up to you and like hand you a soda, and they're like, come over here. Yeah. Like, that's crazy, you know?
Right.
But who knows? Maybe that's what it's like. So I think that religion calls them angels or something, that aliens, soda-bearing creatures. But it goes into that supernatural world, and I think that's a scary, and it's both a scary and an awesome place. It's wonder and terror lives beyond this world, and that's what I'm interested in.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that any time that you're dealing with spiritual world, whether it's religion or anything, there's always something more there than that's on the surface, right?
Totally, yeah.
You know? And I think that we've somehow whitewashed a lot of that, you know, through whatever process, you know, whether it was the common good, you know, or just flat out brainwashing you to think that
you're right.
something is,
or even just science.
It's simple, right? But it's not, because when you look down, you know, into it, and you're like, whoa, I didn't realize that. That's a pretty heavy theme. Because most people look at it like, I die, I go to heaven or hell.
Right.
But I'm pretty sure it's a lot more.
What does that even mean, though? Yeah, I know. Like, what is hell? Where the hell is hell? And what does that mean? Like, are alien beings going to walk up to you this time with a pitchfork and like jab you in the butt and then take you somewhere? Like,
yeah.
I mean, maybe that's what it is, but still, if you were to think about that actually happening for a second, it's like you can't even really grasp in what it couldn't happen in space and time, because it's a non-physical place that you're at. So what does that look like, and what does it mean? I think that you're right. We just simplify it and just move on and go back to,
because it's a lot easier that way. We don't have to think about it. We can just go on living our lives, you know, the way we want, and just go, well, you know, hey, look, every day I go to work, I do the dishes, and I, you know, I'm good to my friends and family, which are important things, but I don't think the path is always. We don't know. You know, the point is, to me, you know, people talk about aliens or whatever, but I don't rule out the possibility of anything.
Yeah.
I used to be more of a cynic, but now I find myself saying, hey, it's a possibility.
Anything's possible.
You know, I'm not going to say that I totally believe 100% that that's reality, but I will say that I do believe that there's definitely a possibility that anything can exist. But we've also crushed that, you know, in a lot of ways.
Totally.
People, you know, even when it comes to something simple like, you know, like the concept of heaven and hell. You talk about that, people are like, wow. But it's like you said, I have the same thought. Like, well, first of all, is there a hell? I mean, really? It's that simple? You're breaking it down to that simple of a theme? We don't know. Maybe it is. Wouldn't that be funny if, you know, we just went and there was nothing? It's just like, whoa, I'm here.
Yeah, it's like exactly like Dante's Inferno.
Or
something like
not
that.
Even that. It's just like what the Bible says. You just die, and you're like, next thing you know, you're at some gates, and some guy's like, yeah, come on in.
Yeah, it's kind of what happens in Dante's Inferno. And then you start getting poked and tortured. And, but you don't have a physical body, so like, what the heck? Torture me all you want. I don't care.
That's
it's not going to hurt. I have no nerves.
It's a great point.
Yeah.
So anyways, well, thank you. I'm happy for your book.
Thank you.
Now that you're getting rich, I suppose you can buy me lunch.
Yeah, let's go get you some lunch right now.